Boris Johnson battling to remain in number 10 anyhow. On Wednesday, several of the Prime Minister's hitherto staunch allies called for him to resign. Among them were Priti Patel and Shapps. Simon Hart, the Welsh Secretary, resigned as the latest cabinet member, and Attorney General Suella Braverman challenged the Prime Minister for her position. The Prime Minister, however, emphasized that he had an enormous mandate from the people to continue in his position. The Prime Minister removed Levelling Up Secretary Michael Gove in a surprise decision, with a Downing Street source calling him a snake who happily tells the press that he wants the leader to resign. Former Brexit campaign supporter Michael Gove, who foiled Boris Johnson's first run for the Tory leadership, called for Theresa May's resignation earlier in the day. In a record-setting 24 hours, more than 40 ministries and aides resigned, leading to his dismissal on Wednesday night. Mr. Hart, the Welsh Secretary, resigned from his position just before 2300 British summer time, proving that resignations persisted late into the night. A number of cabinet colleagues, including Mr. Johnson's old supporters Home Secretary Ms. Patel, Transport Secretary Mr. Shapps, and Business Secretary Kwasi Kwarteng, had tried to convince the Prime Minister to resign. After a record number of resignations, Mr. Johnson must replace 20 ministry jobs. Ms. Braverman, a long-time loyalist, told ITV's Peston later on Wednesday night that Mr. Johnson's handling of recent events had been horrible and that he should go. Health Secretary Matt Hancock, who had previously backed the PM, said he could no longer do so and withdrew his support. Mr. Hancock, who announced he wouldn't seek for leader, expected Mr. Johnson will be gone by tomorrow or next week. However, there are still ministers in the cabinet who support the Prime Minister. These include Deputy Prime Minister Dominic Raab, Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries, and Brexit Opportunities Minister Jacob Rees-Mogg. It has also been brought to the attention of the BBC that Mr. Johnson has been emphasising the number of people who voted for him and has questioned if any of his potential successors will be able to achieve the same level of electoral victory as he did in the next election. Letters of resignation and no confidence began arriving by the early afternoon, and even Mr. Johnson's most faithful supporters privately, and sometimes frankly and colourfully, admitted the game was over, it was done. Finally, one by one, cabinet members contacted me to say they were going to visit the Prime Minister tonight to tell him plainly he had to quit. It looks like Boris Johnson's time as Prime Minister is coming to an end. On Wednesday morning, Mr. Johnson spoke before the Liaison Committee, a group of legislators responsible for reviewing government actions and policy. He said that the earliest year he could imagine a general election being called is 2024. The Prime Minister survived a vote of no confidence earlier this month, and by the book, he can't face another challenge for another year. However, the leadership of the 1922 committee, which coordinates the votes of confidence, is up for election next week. The goal of the rebel Tories running for office is to amend the rules so that a vote of confidence may be called on an earlier date. The disclosures made on Tuesday and Wednesday concerning how the Prime Minister handled charges of sexual misconduct levelled against ex-Deputy Chief Whip Chris Pincher were the impetus for the wave of resignations that occurred on those days. During Mr. Pincher's tenure as a minister at the Foreign Office in 2019, it came to light on Tuesday that Mr. Johnson had been informed directly on a complaint lodged against the Tamworth MP. Two important cabinet members, Chancellor Rishi Sunak and Health Secretary Sajid Javid, resigned that evening when the news contradicted days of denials from Number 10. This dispute is the most recent to cause Conservative members of Parliament to doubt the Prime Minister's leadership and policy choices. There have been several scandals surrounding Mr. Johnson's administration in recent months, including a probe into lockdown parties held in Downing Street. Several Conservative lawmakers have voiced their disagreement with the government's tax increases, reaction to growing living expenses, and overall policy orientation.